Every American president who picked a Federal Reserve chairman got burned for it. In the next 10 minutes, you will see why. Imagine you are Arthur Burns. October 1971. You sit across from President Richard Nixon. He is asking you to break your job. And you already know. You will say yes. That single decision will set off the worst inflation the United States has seen in a century. Now it is April 2026. Powell's term as Fed chair ends in less than a month. A new nominee waits for a Senate hearing. The names have changed. The pattern has not. Every time a president picks a Fed chair to deliver the policy he wants, something breaks. Sometimes the economy, sometimes the president. Never nothing. The Federal Reserve was designed so that no president could pick up a phone and order cheap money. Every president since has tried anyway. The central bank was built in 1913 to manage the dollar, the banks, and the flow of money. Politics was supposed to stop at the door. It never did. During the Great Depression, the Fed failed spectacularly. It tightened credit when it should have loosened. Nearly 10,000 banks collapsed. For a dairy farmer in Wisconsin who had deposited 20 years of earnings in his local bank, the money was simply gone by morning. A generation of Americans lost their savings. After World War II, the Treasury Department took control. The Fed was told to keep rates low to help pay down the war debt. That lasted until 1951. That year, Harry Truman summoned a Fed governor, William McChesney Martin, and demanded rates stay low forever. Martin refused. The result was the Treasury-Fed Accord of 1951. It restored central bank independence on paper. Martin became chairman a few months later. He would serve for 19 years under 5 different presidents. Martin invented the phrase that still defines the Fed's job. The central bank, he said, is the chaperone at the punch bowl. It must take the punch bowl away just as the party gets going. Nobody likes the chaperone, least of all the presidents. Lyndon Johnson is said to have physically pushed Martin against a wall at his Texas ranch, demanding lower rates to fund the Vietnam War. Martin held his ground. When he left in 1970, Nixon picked his replacement. The replacement was Arthur Burns. Arthur Burns was a respected economist. He had been Nixon's economic mentor since the Eisenhower years. He was supposed to be a statesman. 1971. Nixon was preparing for re-election. Inflation was creeping up. Unemployment was creeping up too. Nixon needed a landslide. Over the course of that year, Nixon called Burns repeatedly. He pressured, flattered, and threatened. The White House tapes later captured the substance in plain language. Burns yielded. The Fed kept rates lower than the data justified. Money supply expanded faster than the economy. Nixon won re-election in 1972 by one of the largest margins in American history. Then the bill came due. By 1974, inflation was running above 11%. By 1979, it had reached 13.5%. The decade became known as the Great Inflation. A school teacher in Ohio who bought a new Ford in 1970 watched the same car cost nearly double by the end of the decade. Arthur Burns spent the rest of his life defending his choices. History has not been kind. In 1979, a different president made a different choice. Jimmy Carter's economy was collapsing under that same inflation. He appointed a man he knew would cause him pain. Paul Volcker. Volcker was an open hawk who had promised to crush inflation whatever the cost. He raised the federal funds rate to nearly 20%. The economy tipped into a deep recession. Unemployment climbed past 10%. Farmers drove tractors onto the streets of Washington in protest. Inflation broke. So did Jimmy Carter's presidency. He lost the 1980 election to Ronald Reagan in one of the largest landslides of the modern era. 2 presidents, 2 choices. Nixon chose a loyal chairman and got the great inflation. Carter chose an independent hawk and lost his job. One man bent the Fed. The other let the Fed bend him. Then came Alan Greenspan. Reagan appointed him in August 1987. 2 months later, the market fell 22% in a single day. Black Monday. Greenspan flooded the system with liquidity. It worked. And taught Wall Street a lesson that lasted 30 years. When markets panic, the Fed rescues them. This became the Greenspan put. It shaped every financial decision until 2008. Look at the pattern across 70 years. Loyal chairmen produce short-term political wins and long-term economic damage. Independent chairmen produce short-term pain and long-term stability. Burns gave Nixon a second term and the country a decade of stagflation. Volcker gave Carter a lost election and the country 20 years of stability. Greenspan gave Reagan a reliable market backstop and the conditions for 2008. Trump publicly pressured Jerome Powell to cut rates for 6 straight years. Powell resisted, mostly. The economy held together, mostly. For a first-time homebuyer in 2023, watching mortgage rates climb past 7%, every month Powell held the line was a month. A house stayed out of reach. Another chapter in the same long story. Now Powell's term is almost up, and Kevin Warsh is waiting. Warsh has spent the last decade publicly criticizing the Federal Reserve under Powell. He has called it too slow, too cautious, too political. He was a Fed governor himself from 2006 to 2011, under Bush and Obama. Now he has been nominated to replace the man he has been criticizing. His Senate hearing was scheduled for April 21st. It has already been delayed once. If confirmation slips past May 15th, Vice Chair Philip Jefferson will serve as acting chairman. The transition will happen, one way or another, in a matter of weeks. The question is not whether Kevin Warsh is qualified. He is. The question is what kind of chairman he will decide to be. If Warsh delivers the monetary policy the president wants, the pattern says the country pays for it later. If he asserts independence, the pattern says the president blinks, or the economy breaks the president. There is no third path. In 1971, Richard Nixon made the easy choice. He won his election. The country paid for a decade. In 1979, Jimmy Carter made the hard choice. He lost his election. The country gained 20 years of stability. The Federal Reserve was designed to be independent. But independence has never belonged to the institution. It has always belonged to the person sitting in the chairman's seat, on the day the phone call from the White House comes in. Between now and May 15th, that call is coming. The question is not what Warsh will do. It is which of his predecessors we will wish he had been.